The whole meeting to order. I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. If at some point throughout the meeting you find that you do, please declare it at that time. Deputations, petitions, and public meetings. We have our 2019 Draft 1 budget, and I will pass it over to Jocelyn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to be using the screen. Did you want to move?
I'll move over here, yes.
So, good afternoon, everyone. And today we have our first draft of the 2019 budget, which will be presented by department managers. I'm going to provide an overview, a corporate overview to start with, and then that'll follow with the staff presentations. These are short presentations, and they're here to help facilitate the discussion later on January the 15th, when we'll go through a more in-depth discussion on the budget. So our purpose today is more to orientate members of council with Draft 1 to give you some time to review it and consider it. Hopefully through these presentations today, possibly some questions you may have now might be answered through those presentations, or you may want to ask questions and leave them with us to come back on January 15th and go a little bit further into the details at that time. I think we give you a general overview today.
So what you'd like us to do is listen to ask questions today, take it home, review it over Christmas, and come back prepared on the 15th.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so for 2019, the Draft 1 budget as presented reflects a 5.71% tax rate increase. And if we compare 2019 and 2018 budgets, we can see here in 2018 we had a total budget of $54,000. In 2019 we moved to 66 million. So the main change is in our capital expenditures here. We have 17 million, or 32% in 2018, and we have 26 million in 2019, which represents about 40% of the budget, and the total change is about 11 million. And to balance the budget and maintain a reasonable tax rate increase, reserves have been used where appropriate for some of the one-time expenditures. We have several large capital items included in the budget which draw heavily on the obligatory reserves here. You can see our reserves being drawn down at 16 million. And we also have some debt financing, so we've increased our debt financing by 3.2 million. And within the budget there is a taxation impact of about 565,000, or 2.5% for new staffing related costs. And we've identified in recent years that we need a base adjustment to our tax revenues. And if we were to separate out the staffing base adjustment, which represents about 2.5%, from that 5.71%, we'd be closer to our annual typical increases, and it would be around 3.21%, excluding those staffing changes, which reflect sort of that large base adjustment we need to make. So when we consider the tax rate increase, it's helpful if we look at our municipal comparators. And this chart reflects similar urbanized municipalities within the county. And the bolded line reflects Wasaga Beach at 2019 rates, and this is in comparison to the other municipalities at their 2018 rates. And you can see Wasaga Beach sits towards the bottom of the rank chart and probably is lower once the other municipalities' 2019 rates are considered. Using this information, we can see that for 350,000 valued assessments, so this column here, you can see that the proposed rate would result in municipal taxes on residential of about $1,943 there, or $161.99 per month. And if we compared the 2018 tax rate to the new rate, it would result in a monthly increase of about $8.74 a month for this assessment level. Or if you were at 250,000, about $6.25 for 250,000 assessed property. And in 2018, the average household amount was assessed at $331,000. That just gives you a sense of where we sit in relation to our municipal comparators. So for 2019, the cost drivers for our operating budget change of $2.3 million, it's driven by step and COLA increases, the cost of living adjustment, which is $332,000. Our new positions of $739,000. Planning studies, we have 2 of them, and they total $400,000. We have some additional debt financing included in the budget for $348,000, and our change in policing costs is $125,000. Looking at the capital side, our change of $9 million, you can see that we have numerous projects planned for the year. The new library at $2.8, the new arena at $1.8, fire rescue truck replacement at $500,000, Main Street Bridge is $5 million. Veterans Way improvements is $2.8 million, and storm drainage projects are $2.8, and tertiary filters are $1.4. And
should we wait or ask questions as we come up?
why don't we do it when it's comfortable?
Okay, on just a question, I guess through the mayor, thank you. On the Main Street Bridge, I know that the past 2 years we were not successful in our grants, but we would be requesting another grant for 2019, or?
Perhaps I could defer that question then to Kevin, and maybe he could address that during his presentation. Would that be?
I think that would,
Do you want to do it now?
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah, if we wait till it's the individual, I think would be better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have more capital projects here than the total capital change, but that's because there are some one-time capital items in 2018 that would fall off and more come on, so the total net change is $9 million. So looking now at this slide provides an overview of where costs are being incurred in the operating budget. And if you look at community services at 31%, that's about $12 million. Planning at 6%, that's about $2.3 million. Public Works, 35%, $13.8 million. General Government, which is 11%, $4.4 million. Now I've separated corporate services out on the slide from general government just to give a sense of that amount. And corporate services includes these departments here that I've noted in the call out. So that's 14% for corporate services, which is $5.6 million. And then we have library and council. So that's the $39 million distribution for 2019. And then if we look at our capital expenditures of $26 million, the major purchases for 2019 that are planned, the library and the arena, I put them out separately because they are large. So the arena is $1.8 million, or 7%. The library is 11% at $2.9 million. And then we have roads and bridges, which is really the major portion of our capital expenditures at $12.8 million, and within that is the $5 million for the Main Street Bridge. So for 2019, we will need to use significant levels of the reserve funds. This is normal for capital projects that are DC related, such as the library, the arena, and the roads and bridges. On the left, you can see under the general reserves. Here, you can see that it is the sewer. That is the main reserve being used under general, as well as public works. Sorry, that slide is a little hard to see on the screen. And our general reserves are decreasing by a total of $4 million. For the obligatory reserve funds, we have the main one being the roads, and roads related is the major portion of the draw. And the total decrease in the reserve funds is $12 million. So looking now at our debt servicing costs, you can see that we have 3 new debentures planned for 2019. The arena, the fire truck, and again, part of the Main Street Bridge. And the resulting carrying costs or debt servicing costs is 1.8 million, and still well below the permitted 2018 level of 6.6 million for the annual repayment. And if we look at the actual total debenture costs, in 2018 we had 14 million, and in 2019 we'll have 16 million. An increase of 1.8 million in debt at the end of 2019 versus the end of 2018. So that just gives you a general overview of the budget at a very high level. And now we're going to start into the individual department presentations. And we're going to start with George. Would you like to use the keyboard?
Well, thanks, Jocelyn, for the overview. Just before we move on, are there any questions of the overview at this point?
Just so we're clear, we're going to be moving through the package we were given now. So, is that correct?
Yes.
So if staff can just reference the section that they're in when they come to the table, so we're on the right page. That's the page number.
So the presentations were all included at the very back of the binder under tab 10.
Okay. Just easier if we can follow along with what.
So if we go with those, I think that would be the easiest way to follow along. Maybe we'll begin at each one. We'll make sure everybody's got the right one before we start. So are we all okay for the first presentation?
Madam Mayor, to Jocelyn. You mentioned 2 slides ago with the 1.8 million of total our debt, and then we're well within our top level of 6.8. If I flip back to the previous one, I just want a general sense for myself that overall, with the decrease in, well, where we're taking our reserves from, are we with the 4.0 million for the general discretionary reserves and the auxiliary reserves of 12 million? Are we good with our reserves after we take those?
Through the chair. So we are drawing heavily on our reserves, more so on the DC side, the obligatory reserves. And those reserves are set aside for these purposes of capital asset projects. So while it's a large decrease on that side, it's a normal size decrease. When you ask the question, are we okay? We are okay. However, we do have I think a need to address our DC charges in order to replenish these reserves as we start to draw them down. And I think that's another conversation that I'll bring forward on the 15th of January because it's a little bit more detailed. So yes, it's significant. Yes, we're still okay, but there are some things I think we need to do going forward. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thank you.
So, flipping to the slide dealing with the council operating budget, and you have the detail earlier on in your budget, but here it provides a quick synopsis in terms of the changes, and you can see about a $20,000 increase in the total council expenditures, of which about 10,000 is just in wages, and that's just the cost of living. And then you'll see an increase about 8,000 in terms of the integrity commissioner expense, and essentially some miscellaneous changes within the council member budget. So that's a quick synopsis of the operating. And flipping to the next page, you'll see the capital, and there's some money set aside for computer and office equipment upgrades, and then placeholder for any furniture that needs to be replaced or whatnot. It falls under the council's purview, whether it's in the mayor's office or in the council boardroom. We've just put some funding there for that. So the total capital for council is $4,500. So that's essentially the changes from council, from an operating and capital at this point in time. Any questions on that?
George, just the integrity commissioner. The operating budget in 2018 was $6,500. I don't recall what the actual was, but we're speculating 2019 a budget of 15. I guess why the anticipation of such a significant increase in a budget amount for somebody we hope we never use.
So when you look at the actuals to October 31st, we're almost at 14,000. Going forward, that may change. In terms of the discussion around the 15,000, Jocelyn, can you share with council the rationale behind that?
Yeah, so we just left it at that rate for the first year because there was thought with changes of one council to another that there might need to still be some funding there. And we just left that for the first year, but I anticipate that it would probably go down. But considered it appropriate to leave it for one more year.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the fact that it's going to be needed. I just didn't understand how we got from a budget amount of 6,500 and we now know is 14,000. But so the 15 is based on the fact that in 2018 we spent 14,000. Is that what I'm hearing? You've assumed that it is going to be similar to what was in the previous year?
Yes, we just
Okay.
thought there could
All
be
right.
a need, and we just left it there should there be a need. But that could be one area that could be carried back as well.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Dina?
Perhaps I could help with this. With the Integrity Commissioner, additional responsibilities for advice under the MCIA, those are costs that the municipality would not have seen before. That could be potentially coming forward if a council member is asking for written advice. That would be over and above what a municipality has had to do before due to the legislative changes that take effect March 1st. That might help.
Okay. Councillor Boulanger?
Thank you, Mayor. Would the training fall into, from the Integrity Commissioner we just had, would that fall under his cost or under a separate account?
Through the chair, generally all of the costs associated with the Integrity Commissioner will fall under this budget here.
Yeah, so that wouldn't have been captured yet, I'm assuming, because it just happened, so we'll probably end the year in the neighborhood of 15,000, I'm assuming.
Councillor Foster?
Yes, Your Worship, and I just want to get some clarity on this because I've done a lot of dissection here, but that's not the intent for today. It's just to have the general overview.
Yes.
Because I mean, again, if you look at the things like corporate initiatives, the 50,000 that was on there, that's what it was last year, but there was only, according to this, to the end of October, there was only 5,000 used. In the year of 2017 they used 121. So I want to get at some point clarification on those numbers, but if I'm getting it right, today is not the day for me to drill down too deeply.
If there's something you want to ask today, ask it.
I think I just did
then. Jocelyn?
So if I could, then what I'll do is I'll make sure that when we discuss things on January 15th, I'll address that specifically, the background of that line item.
Okay.
Because
And
what I might do, because I have a bunch of notes, what I may do is just go to the department heads and ask them directly, if that's all right, to speed things along and to keep us in the high level.
Jocelyn?
Generally, we do anticipate an opportunity for council members to direct their questions back to CAO and Treasury so that we can come forward on the 15th and prepare to respond to some of those questions. So that would work well if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So maybe anybody who has questions that looking, over the next few weeks, if we have questions, we can put it in an email, send it off, and then on the 15th, we can all get answers, everybody can hear the same answers.
And your worship, would it be appropriate if we were doing that in the form of a email to do it as a group email so staff aren't necessarily asked the same questions 7 different times? Would that be acceptable?
I don't see why we couldn't copy each other as long as it doesn't turn into a conversation, as long as it's just a matter of sending it to them and then we know what other people have asked.
Again, I have the same question as Councillor Wells on the previous one, and I just don't want to.
Yeah, as long as we don't turn it into an email conversation, then it's good.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So just moving on to capital, it was a very brief presentation. Any questions on the capital? So moving on to administration. So here we have a position that has been vacant for a while, and what's being recommended is that the filling of that position be deferred until 2020. We've got a new position being recommended, and that's a human resources officer. This is a position that was recommended as part of the efficiency review that was conducted in 2016, and it's basically to assist the human resource manager in her role. That position has been filled for the last 3 or 4 months in an acting capacity, and the volume of work has certainly substantiated that position. So from a standpoint in terms of what's viewed as being a priority within the organization, it's rather than fill the strategic corporate initiatives position, take that position, defer it for a year, and take the funds that were there and allocate it toward this position. So this results actually in a little bit of a savings in terms of the administration budget from a salaries perspective. So that shows you the org chart there, and then if you go on, you can see in terms of the wages, there's a slight decrease in some of the wages because of that reallocation. So that's the staffing component, and then if we move on to the operating, the highlight there is the reduction in the UMF grant, and for the new members of council, last year we were advised that the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant that the town is receiving would be reduced by 15% in each of the next, well now it's 4 years, but it was 5 years then. And that results in a decrease of approximately $500,000 per year. So this was a grant that the town received, and now it's going to go from 2.3 million, and for 2019 it's going to be 1.8 million. This is a substantial decrease. It equates to a little over 2%. If you're looking at 1% tax rate equals about $228,000. So when you reduce by 500, that's about almost 2.2% in terms of if you wanted to equate it to a tax rate increase. So we're having to absorb that within the budget, and we can speak more to that later, but it's a highlight, and I think it's something that we wanted to make sure council was aware of. So those are the highlights with respect to the administration budget. You can see a lot of the accounts have stayed the same, but there have been some that have increased on a marginal basis. Any questions on the administration operating budget?
Councillor Wells?
Yeah, George, just as you said, some are marginal, some are the same, but one or a couple stick out. Employee benefits have gone from 132 in 2018 as a budget amount to 360.
If I may I suggest that in closed session, when we have a closed session, that I answer that question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bray?
Same question.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the capital and admin, you'll see the transfer of the gas tax revenue, and that's what we receive from the province, and you can see an increase there, which is a good news story. We have some money set aside under town hall renovations, and that's just a placeholder to cover the cost of a new office space. There may be the need for new office space, and there was some funds put in there, and there's 5,000 of that 15 is for a replacement furnace on the in the admin area. So 10,000 for new office renovations, 5,000 for a furnace, and then $4,000 again as a placeholder. If a new office is created, then we have funds to pay for the furniture in that office. Just wrapping up the capital, there's $3,500 for security systems. We had, and Derek, I believe Derek's here, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did have a single camera out facing the parking lot, and this $3,500 is to expand our exterior security cameras so that we have a better view of the parking lot and a higher quality camera. And the audio equipment is audio equipment for the council chamber. So those are the highlights of the administration capital budget.
Councillor Foster?
Sorry, and just a quick one on that renovations piece. That's not related to the proposal for upstairs between the building department.
No, this is down
Okay,
on the main floor.
that's all I need for now, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wells?
And just one, is there, in here, I don't see audio equipment for the council chamber, fine. Is there any thought, or was there thought given to creating the opportunity to live stream out of the council chamber as we can live stream out of here? At the moment, we can't live stream out of the council chamber, as I understand it.
So yes, we are, within our budgets, we are trying to accommodate that change. And the audio equipment on this one, I believe some of it is under the, perhaps I have to ask Dina to assist me because it's software related that the clerk's budget has in theirs.
Can you address?
I can address that now, and also in their presentation I do have a little word about that, but we will be putting cameras in. I believe they are purchased, but the software that we are using for our agenda management, we're halfway through putting that in. We'll be adding a video module to that, so it'll integrate with our agenda management software. So when people go to our website and look at our agenda minutes, the video feed will be there for each meeting, and it'll all be integrated.
Okay, so the short answer is
Yes.
we will be able to live stream out of the council chamber in the same way that we can live stream out of here without having any
Yes.
impact on this room.
Likely not on YouTube. I'm not sure if it'll go to YouTube. It might just go directly to our website, but there will be some kind
That's
of
fine. It can be done, that's the main thing.
Okay, thank you. So just a quick pie chart just showing the revenues for administration, and you'll see the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant and the other sources of revenues for the administration department. And we already talked about the human resources position. I'll just move on from there. And affordable housing.
For our affordable housing, we mainly have excess funds that we contribute to the reserve for 2019. We have just a small budget for the small amount of affordable housing that we have.
Those relate to the two properties that the town owns on Mosley Street that were under the affordable housing envelope, and the previous council had given direction to pursue the sale of those two properties. So that is with the clerk's office right now, and but we still continue to have costs associated with the maintenance of those two buildings. The next slide pertains to the after-hours clinic. So the after-hours clinic, as members of council are aware, is operating 2 days a week right now. That was funded as part of the 2018 budget. The clinic started operation in the mid part of November, so funds that are unexpended in 2018 will be carried forward into 2019. So it's not anticipated that there's going to be a budget impact on 2019 budget per se. It's carried forward. Now there are some enhancements to the service being considered The uptake has been pretty positive, and I understand that they're now currently looking at perhaps expanding another 2 days a week. Again, my understanding is that that's been built into the cost of the after-hours clinic. So again, that should not impact the 2019 budget. Jocelyn, did you want to add?
And I just wanted to add, we are getting some new budgeted figures from staff working in the clinic. The consultant that's assisting with the project. So probably for draft 2, this budget will increase, but it'll still be within that amount that's carried forward from 2018. But I would expect by draft 2 that we have a bit higher budget than the 132,000 presently shown.
Okay, Councillor Foster?
Just a quick question on this piece, page 5 of 6 there. Under After Hours Clinic, you have the pilot timelines, November 2019 to October 2020. Is it not 2018 to 2019?
Through your worship, yes, that's an error then in
Thank
that
you.
document.
Okay, I just thought we hadn't extended it yet, have we? Thank you.
Okay. And so there's some minor capital items related to computer and office equipment associated with the after-hours clinic. So moving on to policing. The policing model, the way policing is funded, changed about 3 or 4 years ago. So it's based on calls for service and a base amount to cover just minimum staffing. And so what fluctuates is the calls for service, and it's done on a 3-year rolling average. And based on the analysis done by the Ontario Provincial Police, the costs for Wasaga Beach are increasing, and I believe it's increasing by about $124,000 per year. So that would indicate that when they've done the analysis for the 3-year rolling average of calls for service, that there's been an increase, plus any wage increases that have been negotiated or applied to the police services. That's included in that as well. And that's part of the base costs related to the staffing complement assigned to the Huronia West Detachment that work in Wasaga Beach based on the calls for service. I recognize that's a very high-level explanation. If council members are interested in a more detailed explanation with respect to the OPP policing model, I can certainly provide that at one of our upcoming meetings, but that's how those costs are arrived at. Any questions? Okay, move on then, and I'll turn it over to Dina.
So if you could turn in your binders to the Clerk's Cemetery Municipal Enforcement Department's presentation. Stay there. Here.
Thank you, everyone. So this part of the budget presentation will provide an overview for the departments falling under the legislative and clerk's department. It's kind of hard to see there, but we have 3 major sections which fall under the legislative services and clerk's division, and that's the clerk's department, cemetery services, and municipal law enforcement area, which includes bylaw parking and beach run enforcement. During the 2018 budget year, we added a records management and FOI coordinator position, which was developed and approved by council in September and not included in the 2018 budget. The position replaced a part-time position for records management while increasing the duties and responsibilities to ensure compliance with legislation and internal policies, as well as to address identified workload pressure within the department. Scheduled changes in the 2019 budget year for the Municipal Law Enforcement Division will be covered later. For For the clerk's department, the change shown here,
If I could just clarify for folks that tab 2 is where you will find these first few departments, all under the corporate services section. And they'll start with the admin and then move into the clerks, just in case anybody was trying to find them. Thank you.
Jocelyn. The changes shown here between 2019 budget and 2018 budget for base staffing costs reflects in-year approval of the records management position. That 2019 cost of this position is approximately $81,000. Aside from that change, the staffing costs are slightly less in 2019 due to lower step levels for some of the position. So the main changes in operating expenses includes increased costs for the records management and agenda management softwares in 2019. It's non-election year, so only a contribution to reserves will be made. I believe that's $25,000. Training and development costs were also increased slightly to provide the needed support for the current staff as well as the additional staff that will need some training. As far as capital budget, there are minimal capital expenditures needed for 2019. We're continuing with our committee purchases. There was one item carried over from 2018 being the Moby mats for the accessibility committee.
Dina, that's a carryover because they weren't purchased, or it's for additional purchases going forward?
They weren't purchased.
Okay, thank you.
So the total revenues for the clerk's department and committees is $418,410. Other revenues total $54,990, or 13%, with a balance of expenditures funded through taxation at $363,420, or 87%. If there's no questions on that part of the budget, we'll move to cemetery. Those cemetery operation costs are staying status quo with the 2018 spending levels. Most costs are associated with delivery of cemetery services with some minor administrative overhead costs. The majority portion of the internal transfer costs for the support services is for the oversight provided by the Clerks Department. You can see there's not much of a difference from 2018 to 2019 there. However, in the capital budget, there are two fairly large expenditures that are needed for the completion. One is for the completion of a new columbarium, which is also carryover from 2018, a project that wasn't completed in 2018, and also for a new road extension to open up a new section of the cemetery to be able to continue selling plots over there. If you look at the full budget, the total revenues for the cemetery is $53,250, with about 81% covered through fees and services and 17% from reserves. At the end of 2019, the cemetery reserve will be depleted, so there's a need to begin rebuilding the reserve through future budgeted contributions to reserves. Additionally, staff will be reviewing cemetery fees to ensure they're in line with other municipal averages and to ensure that we can have a viable service going forward. Go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, through you to the clerk. On that, if you could just go back one slide there to that cemetery one showing the, so that $21,000 for 2018, and I'm looking at the detailed report, it shows like $485 was used to the end of October, so nothing really. But then you're putting the draft budget estimate for 2019 here is showing 57. Oh, I see, that includes the road extension. Mm-hmm. My bad. Okay, thank you. I thought that was just a columbarium.
You're correct that it has gone up about $9,000 in 2019 for the structures of the columbarium, and I believe that the reason is for the cost of the cement for the pads underneath weren't really attributed in 2018, so we brought it forward in order to be able to add more dollars as well to be able to put the concrete pads underneath.
No, I just Columbarian, they've gone from 21 grand to 57
There's a
according to this,
road.
but that includes the road, so, thank you.
So with that, we'll move to municipal law enforcement. So within the law enforcement operating budget are parking bylaw and beachfront enforcement activities. The parking division generates excess revenues which are transferred to bylaw department to help cover these costs and reduce the need for taxation support. The bylaw division generates about $96,000 through fees and services and fines after consideration of the parking transfer. We still require $174,430 of taxation support for 2019. The Beachfront Enforcement Division, which is driven by the M&R agreement, provides some revenues from fines, but the majority of the budget is covered through taxation in the amount of $162,040. The total taxation for enforcement activity is $336,470.
Just while we're on that matter of the agreement with the M&R, just so that new members might not be aware, we'll have to have a discussion at some point, but for this year, because of how the agreement is written, we really can't get out of it even if we wanted to. We are in a position of having to still do the enforcement and move forward this year as we did last.
That's correct. We would have to give 6 months notice prior to May 1st in order to. As far as capital, we have a vehicle for the parking division, which is a scheduled replacement vehicle that is carried forward from 2018. There may be a change for draft 2. We missed adding a couple of parking ticket printers that we need, so that there may be an additional $4,000 in draft 2 for 2 parking ticket printers, as well as software for one app. The good news is we've managed to, with assistance from Jeff here, we've managed to isolate the amount that the beachfront tickets are we're actually writing and getting that revenue from general reserves actually put into bylaw. As was mixed up in our general amount before, but now we've been able to isolate it. I think it's about $11,000 this year that we've been able to isolate and move over to bylaw. So as far as animal control, it's managed through the bylaw division and remains the same for 2019. The only change here, you see that the contractual wages were changed to manage the labor component using in-house staff, and there's a slight savings there. So instead of contractual wages, we're using in-house staff. An additional, I'll talk about it in a second here, but there is some initiatives we're doing there too. So in summary, a contribution in reserves in the amount of $25,000 ensures elections expenditures are consistent year over year. We will be relaunching the records management software, training staff, and initiating best practices across all departments. Policies and procedures will be revamped and new policies and procedures implemented to address any gaps in accordance with legislation and municipal best practices. The RM position will also allow improved customer service by adding a clerk's department dedicated counter for commissioner of both marriage licensing and burial permits, and general clerk department questions. There'll be an improved customer service there. We are also in the midst of launching iCompass, our agenda management software, which will more efficiently manage agendas and minutes and record decisions. The video component will be launched this spring, which may require council to approve some funds outside of the budget process in order to facilitate installation as soon as possible. And council will receive their agendas in electronic format as well on their iPads. So in addition, due to Bill 68, we're required to implement council staff relations policy and a policy to govern pregnancy and parental leaves for members of council, and those amendments take effect as of March 1, 2019. The cemetery columbarium purchase and installation has been moved forward. There is also a requirement to extend the road.
Sorry, Councillor Bray's, or Deputy Mayor Bray is saying I'm the youngest one here. I don't think we have to worry about that one piece of legislation. I think I'm done.
That's a good thing. The new initiative to improve customer services in canine licensing has commenced and is slated to be complete by the spring. This initiative is called DocuPet, and it's a really collaborative initiative with the community. It allows for rewards and a lot of programs with our community and pet licensing, and provides incentives for pet licensing. So it's a great program that I implemented back in Erin, but we've also brought it forward to Wasaga Beach, and I think it'll be quite successful here as well. In addition, the overturn of staff in the bylaw department has created opportunity to slightly reorganize the bylaw department, removing tiered levels and adding additional oversight by the clerk. The department will see consistent enforcement practices and improvement in customer service and efficiency, continued contract staffing and increased property standards enforcement required by the Residential Tenancies Act, shown a need for the increase in full-time staff complement. We are unsure of the impacts of the department related to cannabis legislation at this point, but we'll come back to council when we do know any changes that are required for that. With the new model, there is a potential to reduce summer staff trained as park wardens, and we'll be working with Treasury and HR to look at potential savings in the summertime. We're just working on this now. Our coordinator has brought it forward recently, so this is something, the initiative that we'll be working. Hopefully by draft 2 we'll have more information on that. There are several outdated bylaws that exist which will be brought forward to council for adoption to improve operations and customer service, including business licensing, signs, and animal control is where we're going to begin. And the department will also continue to identify continuous improvement initiatives and implement those accordingly throughout the year. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Is there any other questions of Dina? Okay, thank you.
So, does everyone now have the Treasury and Expenditures Information Technology Department on presentations in front of you? So for the Treasury Department, which covers two department areas here, information technology as well as the Treasury Department, we basically have status quo in our organization chart with 2 exceptions. We have one new position that's been added under Treasury, which is a senior accounting clerk position. This is needed to address some of the volume of work that exists in the department right now at the senior accounting level. Included in the package is a business case which outlines some of the impact that this need is having on the staff presently, along with risks associated with if we were to continue as is without this position. There is also a rate change proposed under the budget financial analyst supervisor position, as we've changed this to supervise over the accounts payable, accounts receivable position. This rate change would be confirmed through our normal external consultant process where positions are evaluated, and this change allows us to realign some of the reporting staff to their supervisors and balance it out a little bit within the department, because we have a lot of staff under one individual right now, and this just brings us a bit more balance. Our accounts payable and receivable position is changing in the new year as the 2 individuals who are sharing this role presently are, one is retiring, and so we will be replacing this position with one individual. So at that time we'll make that change. So under the Treasury Department, the total change from 2018 to 2019 is $109,000, of which you can see 78,000 represents the changes referenced for the new staffing position and the rate change. The remaining change is representing the cost of living adjustment and the step adjustments for the department. For the operating overheads, we have a small increase in our training and development costs there because we do have a number of staff that have expressed interest and do need to go on various types of training. Under our administrative overhead, 91% of the cost for the administrative overhead is driven through by postage and courier and our software and our office expense. Of that line item, postage and courier represents 115,000 of that line item. And we did reduce the postage budget from 120,000 down to 115, and that helped offset our CPI increases that happened to the regular accounts for the year. For capital,
Sorry, Councillor
Just
Foss.
that's okay, I'll move back.
So the interest and service charge for credit cards, $126,000. Interest and service charges for credit cards. So that's not balances, that's what we're paying to the bank.
Yes. So this is for offering the services at our front counter to
Okay.
pay by credit card.
Okay, it's not like George was running out a big tab. Okay, thank you. That's my, sorry.
It is a,
You were just saving that till
I was curious.
it is a substantial cost.
Yes.
We do offer payments on our website by Visa, and for our commercial businesses that sometimes may want to pay large bills, we require them to use that service because if they pay through our website, the town does not incur this cost. The individual incurs the cost. So on large, very large payments, we won't accept the credit card at the counter because the cost, as you can see, is quite substantial to the town to pick up that portion of the transaction.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Kenny.
Through her worship back, just adding to what Dave was mentioning here, reading through the budget, there's, and I read it the same way as Dave did, as far as credit cards and that being used through the town, not the cost of our clients. Is there any way we could clarify that in the budget line so that, you know, interest and service charges for clients?
Or credit card services,
Service. Yeah, not charges.
Credit card services.
something like that.
We will make a note of
Merchant
suggested
charges,
changes.
yeah. Just,
Just for clarification.
yeah.
Yes, the first time I saw it, I asked the same question. I was surprised by it and wondered myself. So I agree that a little bit better clarity on the name might help us a little bit.
Thank you.
So we'll see what we can do there.
Councillor Boulanger?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know how long we've been doing that, but certainly I, for one, and many others now with some of the rewards on credit cards, it's you know, paid by property tax on a credit card where previously I would have come in and paid it. But there's probably some benefits too, as far as, you know, from a collection or speed of payment that we've been getting with going to a credit card. So I just didn't know if you had any comments on that, because it is a large amount of money. So, but I believe there might have been some offsetting benefits.
And through your worship, I would agree that there are some offsetting benefits, hard to quantify those benefits. And as well in this number, I believe, is the payments that we're using for our parking. It's coming through through systems as well. We have various payment systems, and those payment systems are reflected in here as well. So I believe there are offsetting benefits, but not to totally offset that amount, I don't think, but it is a reasonable comment to recognize that.
Thank you.
We have a small capital budget. We have some new chairs that need replacement. replacing, and as well, we have an amount in there for computer equipment related to the new position. For debentures, our total debenture costs in 2019, in the third quarter, we'll see 2 debentures finish, and we have also proposed 3 new debentures will come on in 2019 for the fire truck arena and Main Street Bridge. So our net change in debenture expenditures over 2019 over 2018 will be a total change of $348,000 on the expense side. So those debentures, principal and interest for the ones that we will have in 2019, they total $1.8 million in debt servicing costs. And our annual repayment limit for 2018 was $6.6 million. So we're utilizing approximately 27% of the ARL at this time. Now that ARL is updated each year based on our financial position. So we would likely see some changes going forward for 2020 and 2019 as we start to draw on our reserves, and our financial position changes somewhat from drawing of the reserves. So we'll see what that comes through, but at this time we're using about 27%, so we have a large margin in there.
Councillor Boulanger?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pretty sure, and I'm sure that staff read it too, but recently from Government for the People, from Mr. Ford through his finance minister, I believe there was a comment that for those municipalities that aren't carrying enough debt and have strong reserves, that there would be less consideration for us receiving grants. So I think it's just important to acknowledge that, because you know, certainly when you look at the cost of carrying additional debt versus losing a significant grant, it's something that council will have to consider going forward.
And if I may add to that, we did experience that a couple of years ago where we were denied a grant because our financial position was too strong to support the grant versus what other municipalities needed.
Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Your Worship. If that's our worst problem, then it's not a bad day.
Exactly.
And again, Councillor Boulanger pointed it out, but I don't think debt servicing ratios, taking advice from the province, is necessarily a good thing. I think really those are the comments. I just had a quick question on this one, and I know somewhere in here I did see the list of debentures and maturity dates. I think it's in here. Are they all 10 years?
No. So if you go to that document I gave you right when you first came in, which was the presentation.
Okay.
That I did at the beginning.
In
there I listed maturity dates on that slide because I thought you might want to know.
Yeah, okay, I'll have them on.
And it would help you with that.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Kinney?
Worship, through Dave's comments were my comments.
Okay. You're like one mind.
Worship? No.
Carry on.
Carry on. So just to summarize, our staffing position is our major request for the year. Some of the forecasting that's going to be needed, I'll need to take a close look at our forecast for the outlook years once we start to get a sense of council's priorities. We do have a lot coming at us in the next 4 years on the capital side, so we will need to really understand what we want to achieve in those next 4 years to balance the use of reserves and debt and forecast those out. So that will be a major focus in Q1 as we move forward. Some of the other goals that we have in line for 2019, just looking more at our investments a little more closely and seeing what we can do with those. Managing our beachfront financial collections and managing our leases there. Updating some of our financial policies and procedures and writing some of our standard operating procedures. We have some work to do in that area that we haven't been able to get to. Again, with the additional resource, that's where some of these things will help get done if we have the additional resource. And some customer service enhancements we've been trying to see what we can do to make paying us easier. Anything we can do in that is great for them and great for us as well. So now moving into information technology for 2019, fairly status quo on the wages and benefits. The decline in the change over the 2 years is just related to lower step levels as we change staff. And that's offset by our increases in step and COLA adjustments. For operating overheads, we have some new services that we've added for 2019 as a result of our cyber incident. So we are using right now presently the services of CompuSolve for our to enhance our computer securities. And so we budgeted for an outside service at this time. That could change as we move towards draft 2, as we are still looking at options going forward. We have also increased or put in a budget for some security consulting because we want to start having more time to review the security issues as a group, and we would like to have some security specialists join us for some of those discussions, as well as some of the recommendations that have come out of the report that was done by Hexagen. We had needed some dollars to help implement some of those recommendations. And then we've added cyber insurance for going forward, so that's an additional cost in there as well. And those are the major changes for 2019 for the information technology budget.
Any questions on that?
On the capital side, we have total $67,000, and I'm just going to give you an overview of the items that are in there. So we have some servers that we need to purchase, an SQL server, and that's about $12,000. We also have virtual scale servers that we need to purchase, and they cost about $30,000. And another server, domain controller server, at $8,000. We have a UPS battery that needs replacement, that's $8,000. We have the council chambers projection project, which includes working with the getting the chamber councils able to run to view the presentations better in the room, and that's about $7,000. And some smaller items, laptops and network improvements, for another $2,000. So basically that is the equipment that is looked at for 2019 in the capital budget.
The servers we're talking about, roughly $50,000. Is that part of the enhancement for cybersecurity? Is that where that need arises from?
These are replacements that were in the system. I'm just going to see.
That's right. So these are end-of-life units. So they're replacements. They've exceeded their useful life, and therefore we have to replace them.
What is the lifespan on average for these things?
On average is 5 to 6 years. We try to get 6 years out of them.
Thank you.
And that concludes this section. So we now have the fire department. So I'll ask Mike if he'll come up and join us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to get up here before half pie Kevin gets the table. No. Yeah. All right. I'll just move through. Who's running the slides? Me. Okay, so there's the org chart. I think everybody's familiar with the fire department way we operate. No changes within the staff and no additions proposed for this coming budget. Staffing wages, you do see a slight increase there. That's in anticipation of negotiated wage increases and benefit improvements.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Foster.
Is that only for union staff?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just further on that, we are at the end of a collective agreement this calendar year. So starting 2019, we're back at the table negotiating with the Firefighters Association again. Okay, under the operating budget, it's essentially status quo. The only account I did want to highlight is dispatch. You'll see a significant increase in the dispatch operating budget. For those that don't know, I think everybody at this table does, we contract Barrie Fire Services to provide our dispatching. They dispatch for most of the fire departments in the county. So what they've done is they've conducted an extensive review of the costs associated with running a fully functional dispatch operation for emergency services. They also did a market comparison to other dispatching agencies that are local to us. So the result was a significant increase in the costs. Now, it is fair. I have looked at some comparables, and they were providing the service for a very low cost for what we were getting. So it was overdue that they went and did this market comparison. Also included in that amount is a new software program that we're operating. It's a program that is used at the fire station. It's used with iPads on the trucks and also on the firefighters' phones. They have apps, so it's an alerting and information program. So when we get a call, this provides everybody with up-to-date information and mapping. So when we get a chance, when council's at the fire hall the next time, I'd like to show you the new system. So it's included in that amount. Under capital, there's a few projects. I did want to talk about a couple more significant ones. Breathing apparatus. So the current breathing apparatus that we have in the department has reached its end of life. Breathing apparatus is based on a National Fire Protection Association standard. When breathing apparatus becomes 2 standards old, best practice is to replace it. So we're at that point where we want to start replacing it. Now, to replace it in a lump sum cost would be huge. We're looking at $250,000. So we're looking at a lease. We've never leased this equipment before. We've always purchased it, and we've usually taken 3 or 4 years to purchase it. What we're proposing this year is to purchase it all. So we have all brand new equipment that's all exactly the same, but it's being leased. It's a lease to own. So it'd be a 10-year lease with the first 5 years. Sorry, it'd be a 5-year lease, and then the second 5 years we wouldn't be paying for this equipment that should last us 10 years. Okay, so it's a little change. We've talked with our treasurer, and we've looked at the numbers, and this lease would be the best option for us. So. And the fire rescue truck.
I think you answered the question,
yes.
But I just want to ask. So the comparative of purchase and finance, at the end of life, it's better to have leased. Financially, it's better to have leased than to have purchased and financed. In other words, the lease rate is less than we would be paying in financing charge.
Through your worship, we had proposed the leasing under this scenario of the budget, and we had proposed that in the RFP that we ask for the various financing options, outright purchase, the leasing option. We're selecting the leasing option at this time, but we would need through the RFP process be able to really confirm those numbers fully.
Okay.
I did look at another municipality that had leased them. It did look reasonable based on what they had gone through, but we do still need to go through that process to finalize the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. And then I did want to speak to the request to replace fire rescue truck. The useful life of one of these types of vehicles is 20 years. However, the town, we've historically pushed them to 25, which is the maximum number of years that it's recommended by the insurance underwriters, the National Fire Protection Association, and the Office of the Fire Marshal. The current rescue truck we have is 26 years, so this is the first time a vehicle has surpassed that 25 years. It was proposed in the 2018 budget. However, the discussions led to this being postponed to be brought forward for this for the 2019 budget. So, pretty much all I have on that. Any questions? Okay.
Oh, maybe.
Just
Councillor
one other
Jones.
question, Mike. Just staffing, somewhere I saw it. We have full-time, well, there it is, full-time 15. I know that was an increase 4 years ago or so, to provide full-time coverage. Now we have 16 volunteers shown here. I think I recall at one time we had 20 volunteers. So is it still a complement of 20, but we just don't have 4 on the complement, or did we reduce the complement to 16 at the time we added staffing full-time?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, the number has been reduced from 20 to 16 when we added the additional 6 full-time staff. So the department, with the additional full-time staff, the department grew by only 2 with the reduction of the volunteers.
Okay. At some point in the presentation, I guess, I'm just looking for the impact on overtime that has occurred, because I remember going back, much of the discussion around the full-time additions had to do with overtime costs, and I have to say I'm not sort of up to date on what the impact has been on overtime costs. So at some point, as we go down the road, perhaps you can address that for me.
Yes, through your Worship. Yeah, I would actually like to have a very comprehensive discussion on overtime so the council has a full appreciation for what those costs are and where it all comes from, because there's different things that trigger overtime and some of it's uncontrollable. So yeah, I would like to have that conversation for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Bray.
Thank you. A couple of years ago, I toured hall number 2 with the fire chief, and I know then you had identified a need for renovations, and I don't see it in this budget, so I imagine they're probably getting more and more required.
Through your Worship, yes, you will see that in this term of council. I would like the opportunity to take council for a tour and have a look at that facility, just so you have an appreciation of what needs to be done there.
Councillor Boulanger.
Thank you to the Mayor. Chief, just not for today, but when we get into the detail, I believe on the heavy-duty vehicle, when we were discussing that last year, you had talked about this was somewhat in a surplus. It was primarily used for training, and it wasn't a vehicle that was used necessarily on regular service day in and day out. But maybe you could give us the information of its utilization through the course of this past year.
Okay.
Thanks.
Did you want me to answer that now, or is that for further discussion?
If you can answer it now,
okay,
go ahead.
through you, Your Worship. It's not a vehicle for training. We don't have such a vehicle. All vehicles are in service, action-ready vehicles. It's not for training only. It's not one of the 2 frontline pumpers that respond to all the calls. So it's called out for every fire call. It's called out for any type of rescue call. So it gets a lot of use. It's just not one of the frontline pumpers. So I want to be clear that it's not a training only vehicle. We don't.
No, you had just mentioned that you had used it quite a bit for training.
Yeah.
But, thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Yeah, just to follow up, Mike, to something we talked about years ago. Maybe it's not considered needed or necessary, but I remember talking some time back about, and I have no idea of costing, but it would be a capital item, the installation of control lights on River Road West at Hall 1 and Mosley Street at Hall 2, particularly Hall 2, where it's just as you come out of a curve in the road. It's not uncommon to see lights that can be triggered by the firefighters if they're leaving on an emergency call. If they're just going out to inspect a school or a business, that's a different story. But on emergency call out, to be able to trigger those lights for the benefit of traffic flow is just something that I think is a kind of a common thing, and I just wondered why we've never implemented that.
Okay, through you, Your Worship. When we built the new station, that was discussed, and then we looked at the sight lines there and realized that with the truck pulling out with its emergency lights on, there's good sight lines coming from either east or west. So, and to date, we've had no issues there. At the same time, when we discussed that, we also looked at Station 2, and again, I know there's that slight S-bend just as you're coming from the west, but there are still very good sight lines there as well. And then we looked and we said, have we had, and we've spoken with all the firefighters, have we had any issues there? And no. So we've left it at that. Our residents know where the fire halls are, and I think it doesn't mean it's only residents. We obviously have lots of tourists in town, but we're monitoring it. Let's say that Station 1, I don't see an issue at all, but Station 2 will continue to monitor.
Good, thank you.
Okay. And revenue, we're not a very revenue-rich department, unfortunately. This is where my pies make Sorry.
But the calendars aren't selling well?
Yeah, the calendars
where's the
are not
calendar?
going like they really went. So anyway, I don't have anything further on that. Emergency management and occupational health and safety, 2 other budgets that I'm responsible for. They remain status quo, so there's nothing further on those. And then the major highlights, I went through those as we looked at those.
Okay. Thank you. Any final questions of Mike? Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have Chris up for recreation, events, and facilities.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so first off, I will be staying until the end of the meeting. We have some discussion around the org chart for my department, and we'll leave that for in camera.
Oh.
Sorry. Could I just ask for clarification from the clerk? Do we have a closed session in today? It's on tonight.
There is a closed session during the council meeting, not during the council meeting.
Thanks.
You're
I'll be
staying
here.
really late.
You'll be really late.
Cancel your plans for this evening.
Sorry.
I love Tuesday night. Great. Okay, so moving on. I think something important to note about this year's budget with recreation events and facilities is that our services are more or less status quo. We haven't created any major increases. There are step and COLA numbers in our staffing costs, and we still maintain a negative, and we'll go through those numbers in detail later today. Beyond that, looking at some of the major areas in my department, you'll see our admin costs. There we in fact are changing out some of those total numbers. We don't have comparisons to 2018, but looking towards establishing permanent operating and staffing costs in the volunteer and the seniors area, which had been previously a special project under the admin area. Our arena is obviously a significant cost to the community, although significant revenue generator in our department as well. The Recplex is the second greatest cost center, but also a revenue generator in the hundreds of thousands. Last but not least, community and beachfront events, and there is a division between those things that were governed by the Beachfront Management Board versus events that happened into the shoulder seasons and elsewhere in town. Any questions on this section? Great. Good, so moving over to capital, we will discuss in a little more detail on a further slide the future arena and plans surrounding it. It is by far the major capital consideration for recreation events and facilities this year. Beyond that, we have an ice resurfacing machine. This was deferred 1 year ago, and we should keep in mind, although a significant investment, it does take us about 1 year to have the unit built. It is an ordering process. That price is $90,000, and we have current quotes for that machine. Beyond that, there are some small enhancements throughout my departments, and I can give you some detail. The youth center will be the major recipient of this furniture costs. We intend to rebuild the study carrels for the computer centers. To date, they're just plastic folding tables and a mismatch of chairs, and it's high time we build out something proper, and we're using that facility double time now with the seniors in the daytime, and they are picking up participation numbers with our computer courses. Beyond that, there is a scheduled event office furniture as well. To date, we've only used hand-me-down pieces through beachfront properties as we populate the upstairs of the old fire hall. Moving down the list, computer is just one scheduled staff computer build out and upgrades to a expiring photocopier. Signs and flagpoles. We have been working in 2018 on a plan to have the major gateways signed properly out of my department, and you may have seen some 4x8 signs that are matching with our program rec guide. Beyond that, we intend to add the proper branding once the exercise is done on the top, and an event listing for the 3 coming events. So a majority of $10,000 of this $32,000 is around a carryover from 2018 because we're waiting on that branding exercise. The remaining $22,000 is an initiative that we can outline in more detail if we discuss waterfront safety, but our idea here is to move beyond the main beachfront, where we've done some good signage, I think, in 2018, and we've heard lots of compliments on that. But our proposal surrounds all of the street ends, the significant street ends, west of the main end to the end of town. So to have drowning awareness and 911 locations for people in distress on our beach at all the major street ends, matching what we've done every 100 meters on the main beachfront, and that's the majority of that $22,000. Beyond that, kitchen upgrades, the new youth center garage meeting space does have proper plumbing and electrical already, but we haven't gone the distance to buy refrigerator or any appliances there. Garbage bins, as well as fencing, is upgrades for our special events at the main end. We haven't had proper bins beyond just 50-gallon barrels, and we'd like to have recycling available, as well as a bigger supply of event fencing so that we don't have to rent anymore. Beyond that, new arena we'll speak to in a coming slide. Recplex renovations. This is $10,000, a placeholder for number 3 of 3 hot water heaters. We have replaced 2 in the last 3 years, and we are also going through a pretty significant overhaul, trying to understand the domestic hot water in the YMCA, and we intend to use this in partnership with the Y, in fact, to ensure that they are monitoring this in an effective manner, and they want to be part of the final decision. Youth Center garage, there is one outstanding item with our recent renovation. We need to have proper wheelchair access into the doors, and we have priced to have asphalt ramping there so that we can plow the lot effectively and not build a porch with ramps. The remaining $19,000 for youth center renovations is all around accessibility as well, and we do have a pending grant. But in discussions with the treasurer, we talked that if the grant is not successful by summer, we will move forward knowing that we have requirements to upgrade the railings and concrete ramps on the outside of the main youth center building, as well as automatic door openers. The building wasn't equipped with that at the time that it was built. And then in addition to the renovations at the youth center garage, we have planned to build a proper storage shed. We have the foundation already, but this wasn't viable in the current year's capital towards that project. And last but not least, I did mention the event fencing already. Oh, and the ice resurfacer. So, any questions around capital in recreation events and facility?
Councillor Blanchet?
Thank you. Just one question, and I just noticed when I pass the high school in Stainer all the time that they build sheds in shop, and they sell them. I didn't know that if that's something we may have looked at, or it might be a consideration that they might do something for us.
Are you looking for them to do it for free?
Well, no, not necessarily, but maybe
You
at
can
the
go
best,
ask them.
maybe at the best possible cost, maybe less than $5,000. But it is part of their program, and it looks like they build them on an ongoing basis and do sell them. So.
Interesting, a good youth initiative potentially. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Councillor Wells?
Chris, I read somewhere here, I just don't see it right at this moment, but a second ice machine for the outdoor rink. Can you explain to me
I can
why
certainly.
we need a second one? We only have one ice surface, or are we planning to expand?
No, so actually today we currently own 2 Olympia ice resurfacers. The older unit is at the outdoor rink, and the idea would be that we keep the newer of the 2. In fact, built into this quote is a $10,000 credit to sell our oldest machine. And the unit that we currently use 12 months a year at the Wasaga Stars Arena will be replaced with a brand new. And it's 7 years older than younger than the one that we're currently using at the outdoor rink. So we'll move it to the outdoor rink and sell or trade in our oldest machine.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought we were talking about I thought it was referring to the ice machine that cools the surface to create the ice. That's my misunderstanding.
Certainly, no, that's a bigger number than 90, I'm afraid, but we're okay there today.
Okay. No.
Councillor Blanchet?
Thank you, Mayor. You may want to just mention, I believe the new machine too is much more economical to operate. Was it not under, was it a different system, electric versus propane, or I can't recall off the top of my head, but.
Certainly, through you, Your Worship. No, Councillor Blanchet, there had been a discussion in our 2018 budget talks to go to an electric unit. It's close to double, although the price is going down every year. Battery technology is improving, but we have opted to stick with a propane powered model, and we do have good exhaust systems and that are annually inspected, and the idea was to consider the cost savings, roughly $75,000 less to go with a propane model, and we aren't pursuing the more like $170,000 electric model.
Okay, no problem. I probably should have remembered that, but 65.
Councillor Foster?
Was that the Tesla model they were looking at? They cut the rebates for those things.
Or in future, we could go natural gas. This is another option as well. It's a little bit more affordable than propane, but this is the base model that we're looking at.
All right.
Okay, so moving on, although my pieces of pie aren't as big as other departments at all, we do also have a revenue pie in our department, and
It's not a competition.
We do cover close to half of our operating costs, understanding a big chunk of the costs will be capital, and our operating costs do generate some revenue. The arena is the number one revenue generator. I guess if I go around the pie here, starting at ice rentals, just to give you an idea in case there are questions, Canteen Sales, this is an expansion in our arena project. We have always had a concession stand at the sports park, although it will be brought back under my department versus the Parks Department that's over in Public Works. The Recplex facility rentals, so those are room rentals for our halls at the Recplex. Special events is the next section. Roughly $63,000 are generated through our various events. Grant revenue, this is specifically the Seniors Adult Living Center. We did in fact receive $50,000 in 2018, and there may be opportunity to expand this $44,000 number, but that's the current March to March number that we were awarded in year one of this annually recurring grant. Pro shop and vending, a small number there, but a few products that are sold primarily at the arena, as well as vending machines around town. Recreation programs, all of our various, primarily children and adult programs, but we do generate close to $90,000. Other revenues, this is primarily in our admin section and youth. We sell advertising for our rec guide, and we do a significant amount of fundraising at the youth center, as well as some program revenue generation for field trips and things. The facility rentals at the arena, this is for the upstairs hall, $12,000. Grant subsidies, this is in fact an in-out that we offer subsidies primarily to minor hockey and figure skating. Advertising revenues, this is the signs, the clock, and the resurfacing machine at the arena. And the cabin rentals for our summer camp, the hockey and figure skating programs. Any questions around revenues in recreation events and facilities? Okay. Next, this is our sources of funding. We are obviously putting a good chunk into our arena project, and there are some borrowing costs that will be capitalized in that project, and beyond that, this is a Treasury discussion for the most part. If there are questions, maybe I'll refer them to our Treasurer.
Okay.
Great. So major highlights. I think ultimately we're designing a budget that is equivalent to 2018. The year over year is not showing significant growth in this department. Specifically, our recreation programs, solidifying new areas in seniors and volunteers, as well as our current child, youth, and adult programs. We intend to try and implement some programs like we have for the child area and the youth area as well, and we think that sometimes, although these revenues aren't even necessarily cost recovery, it will speak to program quality, and we intend to try and build out our youth section beyond just the services provided at the current youth center. Facility focuses will be around operational excellence, and obviously only two capital projects, and I have a slide yet to talk about the new Twin Pad Arena. The emerging customer service division. So we are starting to build out an idea that will grow into our new Twin Pad rec facility. And the term customer service is there. We do a lot of frontline work at the west end of town at the Recplex now, and one of the ideas behind this customer service idea is that we're going to implement 8 p.m. closing at the recreation desk on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Those are the busiest nights for programs at the Recplex, and we're finding that a lot of families don't make it to our 8:30 to 4:30 typical daytime hours. So that, as well as streamlining the canteens into the one department. And last but not least, special events. For the same budget, we intend to add on at least 2 events, expanding on the Hootenanny, the fall Thanksgiving event, and try and build out some town run focus on the long weekend in May. Those would be the 2 major improvements, although no additional cost at this point.
Oh, Councillor Wells?
Yeah, sorry, Chris, going back to my earlier comment, this is, I found, as you read that, this is where it said, taking on a second refrigeration plant out the outdoor rink. Now, I didn't read a refrigeration plant as being an ice resurfacer. So are we talking about I need some clarification on taking on a second refrigeration plant at the outdoor rink.
Certainly, through your worship, we are changing the department looking after the outdoor rink. And as of this month, in fact, my facilities department is looking after both refrigeration plants again. In the department restructure that happened prior to me coming here in the beginning of 2017, the Parks Department was moved to Public Works. And the Parks Department, under Andy, our former Parks Foreman's leadership, always had looked after that outdoor rink. It was a good fit for the Parks Department that had less training, less duties in the winter season, although they don't have much training, and it worked well out of that old department that had a lot of longevity with our arenas. So we are now looking after that
Okay, so it's just a transfer of responsibility, that's all it is.
That's correct. And we'll have a little bit more discussion on that in the staff restructuring later on today. Okay, so moving on to the new arena. And we've got a lot of more or less technical history here regarding the funding. But for those of you who weren't on council in the past 12 or 18 months, I've had a number of different discussions before council regarding the development of a new twin pad arena project. Ultimately, we need to develop our plan to the point that we have a shovel-ready project, and then we can go out and confirm provincial and federal funding. There will be an opportunity to use provincial and federal grant dollars ultimately for this project, but we can't do that until we've picked our location and we've designed the ultimate building. So there has been quite a bit of work on this to date, and we do have some preliminary designs. We haven't finalized a financial model around what a preliminary design will be, but it's expected that 1.8 million in the coming year will be sufficient to design this facility to the point that we know its cost. And typically, architects will use roughly 10 to 15% of the final build-out cost. So we're starting with a projection exactly as it was built in our DC study in 2015. And as the project unfolds, we'll have a closer target cost for what this project will be.
Again, I think because the arena was in the hub on Main Street, council, that'll be part of council's discussion in the coming month as one of those items that we need to figure out where it's going. Is that appropriate location, or is there other opportunities to put it somewhere else? So, Councillor Foster.
That kind of was part of the question, but it's the design itself is just for the physical plant. There's not a design, a variance in the design, whether it's on the hub or somewhere else. It's just you're looking at the physical building is what your design to date is, or your.
Well, through you, Your Worship, we do have a preliminary site plan with a floor plan of a building, but we have not designed that building. Having an architect and mechanical engineers figure out the exact specifications for a building will be roughly 10 to 15% of the final cost. We won't do that until we know the piece of land that we're putting it on. It starts right from the foundation up. So we have an idea of square footage for a programming estimate, but ultimately we'll have to refine those programming, more or less our wish list, through a costing process as an architect designs the building.
Thank you.
Right, and I think I did see a drawing of some kind of what it could look like, and I think it was based on if it was located on Main Street and trying to work with that piece of property, and that's why I say we need to pick the property before we do much further on that. So.
Okay, this little addendum here, and I think it was answered by Chris in his presentation, but it's so here we're talking at all times in this 12 million, we're talking a twin pad arena. Because the DC report from 2015 talks about a single pad arena. So I'm getting a nod there and a no there.
Jocelyn.
Thank you. I had wanted to address that we built based on the DC study, which at that time was only a single pad arena.
Okay.
But all of the work that's been done to date and any of the information Chris has been putting forward is for a twin pad. So that number is very low, and we need to consider that in looking forward.
Okay, that was where I was going, so thank you for that.
If I may just chime in a bit, the former members of council who were on before may recall there was the arena and then indoor recreation space. And what has evolved has been the combination, bringing the two facilities together to a twin pad. So indoor recreation space and the arena. But the concept would be that the indoor recreation space would be constructed in a way that it could be made into an arena very, very quickly. The plant would be there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the evolution of those two concepts.
And I think if you speak to the public, they are looking for a twin pad arena, two ice services at least for most of the year. So that's something that I think that we have to discuss too before we get too much farther based on what George just said. I think we need to be clear on where we're headed. So, anybody else? Okay. Oh. Right after.
So that concludes the detail on my department, and I guess I'll hand it back to Jocelyn and Beach Run Events.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I've just actually been asked to take 5 minutes.
Yes.
So, quick 5 minutes. We'll come back at 10:02. carry on again. Jocelyn, you're ready?
Thank you. So we're going to resume with the beachfront maintenance and rental property departments, and Juliana's going to give us that information.
Good afternoon. Well, I've already heard that it's kind of getting a little dry, so we'll try to speed this up so that my other colleagues can have a bit more time for their presentations. Well, we'll leave it up to you with the questions you have. So the
Sorry,
beachfront-
we're just trying to find it in our papers here first.
Just hand it out.
Oh, that was
Oh,
a
that's a
separate one?
separate-
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Julian, I didn't look it off. There we go.
Does everybody have it now?
Is this where we should enter it into the book in between?
Yes, that's where it would go.
We all think that
Where I put mine. Just like put mine.
I think we put it number 3 is what we were told.
I did.
There we go. Okay, I think we're ready.
We've all got it now?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so the beachfront departments is broken up into 3 components made up of beachfront maintenance of beach 1 and 2. We've got the beachfront buildings, and we've got the Main Street market area. Up ahead, we have the flow diagram for the staffing, which is made up of the manager of beachfront properties, purchasing, and fleet. And it breaks off. We're looking at changing some of the structures where we have a building and maintenance level 1 supervisor with 2 supervisors below him. And the staffing, basically the summer staff and washroom attendants that are involved with them in the beachfront, with the municipal buildings, as well as the portions that we took in from the provincial park as well, and the MPA, which is our park. You would have seen that in the department overview that I had given you previously. And we have the assistant beachfront property manager that's under contract, as well as 2 mechanics that are part of the fleet department. So going into the beach 1 and 2 maintenance staffing. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, Jocelyn. Yes, that's it. Yes. The basic change here is we have some minor adjustments for the step and bullet adjustments, increases there, but the service changes are basically for the supervisors and the washroom attendants. Some of this money is recovered later on. I'll show you in the slides, but a lot of it is the washrooms and maintaining it. We tried to go to a contract last year. It was cost prohibitive, so we tried to bring it in-house. So we're trying to do different things to see how we can bring those costs down in maintaining the washrooms. But basically the washroom is the big thing. You have a lot of people down there that get used. They got to get cleaned and appropriately supplied with items that you need there. We go to the operating side of it. Basically, we have a $20,000. Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. My apologies. There we go. Yes, I got it. It's we have $20,000 from reserves, which is a carryover item from 2018, which is cleaning up in the MTA. A lot of that overburden sand that we did not do last fall. The rest of the stuff is there, and the staffing increases from the previous slide is there, and everything else is, we have some vehicle maintenance and fuel increases there, but what we're trying to do in the fleet department of things is we're trying to allocate the actual cost per department. And you'll see that for the slide in the fleet department side of things, that every department will have their own section of what the fleet costs are. And we're trying to do that in 2019, breaking fleet out of the, making that a separate department. Any questions on that?
Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you. Just on the cleanup of the MPA parking lots and lands, down $20,000. So
Yes.
did we do like any one-time?
Yes, that was to be done last year. It was a one-time thing. We're trying to bring it back to a state of a park. There was no maintenance done in there since we've taken it over 3-4 years ago, I believe it's now. So there's a lot of blow sand. We want to try to clean that up and make it more presentable, make it more easier to walk through for the public to use.
Okay, so you're anticipating though that we're gonna have a significant reduction in costs this year? Went from 30 down to 20?
Well, we had 30,000 built into the budget last year, but that was reduced to 20. We didn't spend any money there.
Oh, okay.
But that's a strict carryover item from last year.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Foster?
Thank you. It's back to your maintenance, your org chart there. The assistant beachfront property manager is a contract position. And I see things for the, I don't know where it was here. I see different custodian contract, the janitorial services. What line does the assistant beachfront property manager, is that under wage, benefits, and costs, or where does this guy, this person, show up in what?
He's replacing what we had last year. Just looking the beachfront coordinator position.
Assistant beachfront property manager. It's the one. Go back 2 slides, I think. One more. That one. So in the middle.
Yes, that beachfront. He's replacing the beachfront coordinator position that we've had.
Okay. But where's that salary shows where?
Jocelyn?
Do you want me to help?
Sure, it's
Please.
broken up into.
So 80% of that position is in the beachfront rentals budget,
Okay.
and 20% of the position is under the Main Street market.
Okay.
So you have 3 budgets that are in this presentation,
Right.
and that position is split into those 2, Main Street market and beachfront rentals.
So part of that Main Street market staffing, part of that number there, that 16,570 is that person, and part of, okay. Thank you. I just couldn't do a straight line, so appreciate it.
Deputy Mayor Bray?
Yeah, so that position it's a full-time position, but it wasn't before, was it? Like
Sorry?
it was kind of managed through maybe projects and special.
Jocelyn, do you want to clarify?
Yes, so when we had the coordinator position last year, that position was allocated to 3 departments: the administrative department for some of the special projects, the Main Street market, and the beachfront rentals. So there was more staffing dollars in 2019 allocated to the beachfront rentals and Main Street market than in 2018, because that position is not
exist. Okay.
now partly funded over to admin.
Okay,
as it
so
was
it's
in
become a
2018.
full-time beachfront position.
Yes, so it's full-time contract.
Right.
It's a full-time contract that runs for 2019 for the whole year.
Okay.
Sorry, so on the detailed grid then, if I'm looking there, part of that, this may not be the right page even, but part of full-time wages would include that contract? Like I always thought a contract would be, I thought full-time wages were town employees, not contract.
It would still be, if they're still hired internally, it would still be under the town.
Internally?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm all right with it. I'll play with it the next day or 2 and see what I get.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, Juliana?
So we move to the capital side of things. We have some dollars put aside for land improvements. A lot of the flower pots, we're looking at making some additional flower pots. If last year we had done something differently, it was well accepted by the public, where we put some benches, but we put flower pots around the benches. So this year what we're looking at is getting a few more concrete pads, put a few more additional benches with additional flower pots to enhance that area and just improve it generally for the locals and the tourists that come down, so they have some place to sit, watch the sunset, and just improve the whole area. Equipment and garbage bins, we're still looking at trying to get some recycling bins down there. And vehicle maintenance is a carryover item from last year. It was, we're looking at the purchasing the vehicle there, an ATV. It was initially a different vehicle, but we had that changed to an ATV, and that's a carryover item from last year. Other than that, that's the capital expenditures over there.
Councillor Kinney?
Yeah, just a quick question about the vehicle. I'm not overly clear on the purpose. Is it going to go around and help out with the maintenance side as far as picking up garbage and
It's
stuff?
going through the garbage, going through the MPA, going to the beach. It's to bring materials to some of the washrooms, because sometimes you can't get through there with a regular vehicle, but with that vehicle going along the beach, it'll be a lot more easier to access the other end of the beach as well. But a lot of it is for garbage pickup in the park area.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, we get to the Main Street market. Now, we did briefly talk about the staffing changes over here, and it has gone down 20% of that initial position that we were talking about is allocated here, and it's fewer or less dollars than it was previously. Any questions?
Deputy Mayor Bright?
Yeah, it's just a question about the Main Street Market. Is there no longer events staff allocated to the market?
Events
Or
does.
they don't fall under you, they would fall under Chris?
Events does prepare the concerts and stuff that's allocated that's related to the Main Street market. This is just basically the maintenance and maintaining the market. The lease is under this portfolio.
So I thought we were trying to get all the beachfront expenses under one budget. So were they under Chris's budget and I just missed it, or?
I think that's one of the things that some of us around the table are saying. We want to see full cost, you know, the kiosk area, what is the true cost, and we find that some things are being put in other areas or included in the overall beachfront, and it'd be nice to know true costs of everything clearly laid out.
So if I could then, we have beachfront enforcement was presented under Dina's budget. We have beachfront events as part of Chris's portfolio, and then the beachfront maintenance, rental properties and Main Street Market under Giuliano. So when we talk in January, well, we will bring forward something that is consolidated, so that you can have a full picture of the costs associated with beachfront.
I think it's important that we wrap our minds around it. What does it cost the town, be it in loans, be it in taxation, whatever. Like, we need to have a clear understanding. What does it cost this town to have that beachfront? Be it the kiosk, be it the beachfront, all of that. Because I think that will be helpful for us making decisions as to how we move forward.
Okay. We will do that for the next meeting. Okay. Thank you.
So we'll move on if this machine operates. There we go. Main Street Market operations. Under the Main Street Market operations, there is both there on the side. There's some winterization cost, painting. Some of the costs were not maybe reflected properly in the previous budget, so we just want to try to allocate the proper costs for what the maintenance of those kiosks are. What I'd like to say is, out of the revenues that we got coming in this year, 43% of the revenues would be slated to be transferred to reserves that we would be receiving this year. Tenants are anxious and ready to sign up for the new lease, but we're still, as a 3-year lease on the kiosks has expired.
Okay, so just, you know, when I look at this, it looks like, hey, we're making money in the Main Street Market, but has this taken into consideration the fact of all the servicing and all the everything else that went into getting that up and running?
Get up and running.
All the services that had to go underground and all the work that had to be done there, because this looks like the Main Street Market is a huge success. We're putting money away, but were all those other costs covered already?
I believe that all that we take that because that was earlier the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, so the kinds of costs that you're looking at, the servicing costs of all that capital infrastructure that was done initially, no, that was flowed through a reserve account for the Main Street market. So this $30,000 here would be going back to pay some of that reserve back, as it's in a borrowed state right now.
Okay.
And it's roughly $350,000, I think, is the borrowed amount.
Right,
now.
so that's the part that I think we're looking to have very clear to the public that, you know, as we start a new council here, you know, this one slide here looks very positive. But we've got this other amount over here that's kind of been shifted to the side, and that's part of it. We need to know where we're starting from. Deputy Mayor Bray?
And further to that, by moving enforcement and events to different slides, we're not looking at one Main Street market number.
Yeah, we need to know true costs of everything from the start down there to know where we truly at.
Okay, I'll put
And I know
something
that's a big
together.
project to pull
That's
everything
okay.
together, but I think it's important.
Sorry, I think it's myself who needs to do it because different other individuals look after pieces of it. I'll bring the whole thing together in a consolidated format.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Foster?
Yeah, I was playing around in section 3 there near the end of it, and there's about 5 pages of this that if you do the collective math, like everyone here on part 1 and 2, no, Main Street Market is showing that $64,000 down in different areas. They, heaven forbid, we look at the beachfront events, which is 381 net negative. So 81,000, sorry, not $381. So anyway, I think right at the end of that, if you did that consolidation of those numbers, you should be close. But anyway, we'll wait for the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we continue?
Yes.
So the operations will continue now with Main Street Capital. There's not much here for capital, new stuff. It's basically the umbrellas that the public sometimes mistreats, or the weather will take one away and we constantly have to replace those. So that's all we have for the capital on the Main Street market. Beachfront rentals, moving on to beachfront rental properties. Again, we have the beachfront rental properties, the staffing changes that we have here. The enhancement building maintenance supervisor is basically coming out of the farther slides that we have. We had some consolidating contract. These are contracts that were outside. It wasn't contract like an internal contract. It was an external contract where we have the maintenance and Councilor Foster brought that up. I'm just trying to see where it is. Custodial contract and janitorial services that were done externally are now brought internally, and that some of those costs are to cover for that person that.
No, just, Juliana, could we just hold there for a second? The provision at the bottom, contract assistant beachfront property manager position allocated in 2019. When I look at the, okay, all right, when I see it, okay, so that is the same position. And it's allocated, more staff costs allocated in 2019 than in 2018.
That's in the wages benefit.
For beachfront coordinator position. So is the beachfront coordinator position referenced there the same as the contract assistant beachfront property manager position, or are we talking about 2 different positions here?
Jocelyn?
So in 2018, that position was called the beachfront coordinator. In 2019, it's called the beachfront assistant. So, and then in 2018, the coordinator was spread over 3 departments.
Okay.
Now in
Back to that.
2019,
Okay.
there are only.
Gotcha. All right, now I understand it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we're back to rental properties operations. Yes. So we have some we have some increase in building and maintenance operations. Generally, that is we have some repair work that we have to do on top of our regular repairs, but that's increased slightly. But in the end, we have, and I'm not trying to discount saying it looks good, but this year we do have an increase in income that of $150,000 that will go towards the reserves that were born, I guess, initially to
The reserves that are in the negative this fall.
That's right. The reserve that's negative, this is a help offset those initial costs, and hopefully we'll get to a spot where we get everything paid off. questions on this?
No, good.
Rental properties capital. So we have renovations that are scheduled for the splash pad at the washroom and change rooms over there. They're very, very old. They're definitely in need of changing over. I'd be glad to take everyone for a tour when the weather gets better and we can see some of the stuff over there. Some roof repairs that we definitely have to do that on some of the buildings. We've done a lot of roof repairs on some of the buildings, but it's not one building. So it sounds like we're doing roof repair, but it's other buildings that definitely need some repairs. And eventually, once we get the bulk of them completed, that number, that cost for those repairs should definitely go down. But once we get them to a half decent state, we should definitely have a lot less money being spent in that area. We also have the security cameras. That's a program that started 2 years ago. I believe this is the final phase of that installation of those cameras that's being installed this year. And that's what I have.
Any questions on that? Okay.
And that's my presentation here for the properties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana.
Okay, so now we'll move to George. Did you want to join me for economic development?
So, Your Worship, members of council, Andrew McNeil, our Director of Economic Development and Tourism, is ill and not able to attend today. So, as I was not involved in the creation of this particular budget, I've asked Jocelyn to go over the highlights for committee and answer any questions that members of council may have.
Okay, so on the organization chart, under the Director of Economic Development and Tourism, we have the Planning Department, the Building Department, we have an Economic Development Officer, and then we have a new position on the far right called Small Business Development Officer. This proposed new position is to focus efforts entirely on helping small business locate, grow, and prosper the small business companies. And it's supported by the Small Business Enterprise Center that's in Collingwood. As well, there's another additional new position under the Economic Development Officer for the position that is currently under the Chamber of Commerce. So they have been delivering our tourist information services, and through a 3-year transition, it was intended for these activities to come back in under the town beginning in July of 2019. So we assume that responsibility, and this position is there to assume those responsibilities going forward.
Can I just ask a quick question? When you said the Small Business Development Officer is supported by the Small Business Enterprise Center, are they paying for it? Or are they just supportive of that role and think we need one?
Probably not the best person to answer the question, but my understanding is we are contributing some funds towards that Collingwood service, and this would continue to help build that small business requirement here in Wasaga Beach.
Okay, so is it a person working out of that office over there?
They would be working out of here.
Okay, so that's something I'd want more clarity on. Like, to say that it's supported by them, I'd like to know in what fashion. If they're just there as support for information and things, or is there something more to it?
My understanding is it's an information support function, so the position would be here trying to develop Wasaga Beach, and then you have the Small Business Development Office located in Collingwood, which would help support developing small business here in Wasaga Beach.
Okay, all right. Did you want, sorry, you pointed out the one on this page. Did you want to?
Yeah, I did. Sorry, I was just reading a little bit about it. town provides funding to the Small Business Enterprise Center in Collingwood. This will grow a local presence. So it sounds like we're responsible for the position. But yeah, when I look at that org chart, there's 2 other new positions that aren't circled. So will they come later on when we talk about building and planning?
No, could you mind, yes, under building and planning, yes, they'll be discussed by those 2 managers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kenny?
And over Jocelyn. I look at the 2 newly created positions, and I'm just wondering, number 1, because when you combine their income, you're looking at about $115,000. And I'm gonna make the assumption that they're being put there because there's been an established need, for the small business one and the tourism one. I'm just wondering, because the chamber's been looking after it for many years, and they're ending in July. I'll make the wild assumption, is there any thought, and I'm just posing this, for this taxation year, just create 1 position, maybe title it Small Business Development Officer in Tourism, and then look at, is there a need, because of the load, to create that secondary position? I'm just throwing it out there as a thought.
So I'll make note of that and pass that information, that question on, and let the individual responsible for that area come forward back with a response, if that's all right.
Deputy Mayor Bright?
Thank you. Just related to that, I know a number of years ago they looked at phasing out the contract with the Chamber of Commerce and bringing those services in-house. But I think before we hire staff, we should probably look at a business case that supports running it in-house and how we would do it. Because it might still be cost effective to manage it through the chamber or through there's a Collingwood option to it 3 years ago when we talked about it. So I think before we just rush to hire, we should probably look at all 3 options.
Councillor Boulanger?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just further to that question, is it revenue neutral? In other words, what we were paying in service charges to the Chamber of Commerce versus the new position?
I do not believe it's revenue neutral.
Yeah.
It is an additional
so
cost.
that might be a good number to understand as well.
Sorry, I just have to make a note here.
And just while Jocelyn's writing some notes, I think that this program area is certainly something that I want to familiarize myself with again, because some of these things have come forward that I was not aware that were identified as priorities within the organization up until I saw the budget as prepared.
Agreed.
So the impact of the staffing with these changes, you can see that the 2019 staffing costs in total would be $403,000, of which you can see there the enhancement position, which is the tourism development position, and then under service level you can see the $54,000, which is the small business development officer. That's those 2 new positions in there, and the impact that they would have to the changes between 2018 and 2019 staffing, and the annualized figures are to the right. So under the operating budget, the Economic Development Department is funded through taxation. There's $541,000 of taxation revenues. The small business enterprise budget is presently in draft 1 is $3,000 and is being proposed to increase to $5,000 for draft 2. Under tourism partnerships, you have the RT07 partnership that the Economic Development Department works with them to help with our branding and other promotion of tourism in our area. And the rest of the expenditures are fairly standard, other than the last one, the Downtown Master Fund. You can see in 2019 there is no budget in this plan at this time, how there was something there in 2018. Are there any questions on this slide?
I just wanted to ask, well, advertisements is here and I'm looking at it. Is there a section in here that we will talk about a general, the entire organization and how we advertise, where we advertise, and how that flows through? Right now, I think each department has advertising, but I would like to see it more controlled is the wrong word, going through one place. So is that somewhere in here that we can have that discussion, or is that something we'll add on down the road?
I would suggest that I bring it forward on January 15th. I can give you a consolidated advertising picture. The bulk of the advertising budget would be spent here. This is where a lot of the radio promotion is done for the events and activities at the beachfront throughout the season.
Okay.
So
Well,
this is your largest number in the budget.
yeah, and I'm not looking just in this, I'm looking at across the board at whatever we're advertising for, and maybe our communications department can assist with how we can manage that. Just even for how our company logo is used, when and how, and all of those things. I think if it filters through one department, it could be helpful. Councillor Belanger?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If we're going to look at advertising, I'm not sure, but I know on with RTO7 and on the social media side and all of that, there's often a match element. So it's something to consider when we're looking at the total cost, because if this is what we're spending, RTO7 could have an offsetting contribution that they're making that we also need to understand.
And my point is, if we have it funneling through one department, one person through the communications department, you know, that's something that they can be watching for the different opportunities as well. Councillor Wells?
Well, and just on that same note, I think we also have special events doing advertising as well. And so again, it's one of those ones there's a piece here and a piece there and a piece somewhere else, and I think I understand allocating it to the individual departments. I appreciate that, and I support that modeling, but somewhere we need a consolidation on, we referred to it earlier, this is another one where we need a sort of an overview report consolidation that takes the piece out of here, 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 and here, and gives us the overview of what it is in total across all the budgets.
All right. We'll prepare that for the January 15th.
And there may be other areas that you can identify, sorry to do that, but there may be other areas that we haven't referred to, but that can be done for as well.
Yeah, across the board.
Yeah.
Whether it's a development in the newspaper to advertise for a public meeting or whatever it might be, I think it would be helpful through one. Sorry, we got off track.
That's fine. That's okay. I got my notes. Okay, so do we have any other questions on this slide? All right. For the capital budget, it's a very small budget, just regular sign equipment that is purchased, and that's $2,000. So the major highlights are what we just reviewed for the positions, the two positions. And that concludes this presentation. Okay, we now have the library, and Pam, if you would like to come and join me.
Thank you. This budget was prepared by our Library Board Finance Committee as well as the Library Management, and then it was approved by the whole Library Board. We believe that it addresses the changing needs of our community as well as the library in a fiscally responsible manner. This is our current organizational chart. You'll see that we're a pretty lean ship. We have 14 employees, 4 of them are full-time, the remainder of the 10 are part-time. Our part-time staff, the hours that they are allocated range from 0 for our casual call-ins to 30 hours. We have a children's services coordinator working 30 hours and 1 library assistant working 30 hours. At this time in the 2019 budget, we're requesting an increase of 10 hours total for 2 part-time positions. That's 5 hours approximately each. We feel that at this time, these extra hours would help me implement some changes that I'd like to see in collection management, as well as some of our programming. I think that it's important to boost the hours of some of our part-timers for office morale. We've had a pretty serious problem with turnover in the past. It's hard to maintain part-time staff when they have minimal hours. It's hard for them to make a living. We feel that it will improve morale. It will also help us keep our services running, and it won't decrease our resources. The retraining, the advertising of this turnover causes us problems. So at this time, we're just seeking to boost 2 people. The costing involved in that is fairly minimal. It's at less than $16,000. In fact, that costing is almost wiped out by the step differences between the former CEO and myself. So we're almost at neutral. The only other costs involved in staffing for the 2019 budget reflect the COLA increases as well as the minimum wage bump that impacted 2 of our staff members. Operating budget. We've sought a number of minor increases just to help us function slightly better in terms of marketing, in terms of training and development and memberships. Our only real increase that we're asking at this time is in our program budget. Since 2014, we have been operating with a programming budget of $4,500. That is to run programs for all ages for our community of 20,000 people. As you can imagine, that's stretched pretty tight. We have augmented that programming budget with grants from the Ontario government. It's a seniors community grant that has helped us fund some fantastic seniors programming. Unfortunately, we do not know if that grant is going to be available. I have made calls, and of course, they do not have an answer for us, as you can imagine. So at this time, we're respectfully requesting an increase in our programs budget of about $16,500 up to $21,000 total. These funds will help us not only continue with our popular seniors programming, but we will find ways to increase our learning opportunities for children with that money as well. We want to connect Wasaga Beach youngsters with new experiences to get them excited about science, nature, technology. We're looking forward to introducing Wasaga Beach residents to new technology like virtual reality, 3D printing, coding, and robotics. And this larger program budget will help make this possible. Questions?
Through Mayor, just a question. I was I don't believe it was at a board meeting, but we were having a conversation about some of the senior programs, bus tour excursions that they do on an annual basis, and obviously a good part of our community is fits into that category. And I was told that it's almost like a lottery system, because they get people that would sign up maybe enough for 3 buses, but we only are offsetting cost to send 1 bus. So I just think that's something we need to look at. I don't know if that's included in your program update, to look at additional support for those specific programs, but I was quite concerned when you talked about it, given our demographics here, and then the other thing, of course, that just crossed my mind, which would be a whole other topic, is how do you graduate? Like, we were having the one program with the Age Friendly where we were looking for support for people that are maybe in a more financially challenged position, and that maybe there has to be a cost for some and then a subsidy for others. But certainly if we can fill 3 buses and we're only sending 1, and the people actually signed up, and then we have to pick names out of a hat, that's a bit of a concern.
Your Worship, those trips are hugely popular. They are subsidized by the grant. We have run 3 this fall alone. We have over 100 people typically signing up to take part, because we do only have 54 seats on a bus. We have opted to do the lottery system. Otherwise, we've had them sell out within 10 minutes. and we don't feel that that gives everybody equal access. There is the potential to run 2 buses. Unfortunately, it's cost prohibitive for us at this time. The grant cannot cover it. We estimate the cost of each trip about $2,000 is what we allocate. That pays for the bus is about $1,500, and then we try and subsidize the entry fees for whatever attraction that we're visiting. We've tried to keep the cost down so that anybody can take part in these trips. This year, the cost will be $15, and that covers the trip as well as the entry into the attraction. So it's very affordable. Is there a way to gear it to people's income? We haven't at this point, because it's a scary thought to ask people to prove their income. We're hoping that we are reaching the people who need it. The good news is that even the gear to income component is important, but we're also offering these trips to seniors who do not want to drive to the city. There is no way that they want to handle that traffic, the parking nightmares and everything involved. We have outcome measurements for these events, and highly positive. Everybody appreciates the opportunities that we're offering. So if we can do more, that would be fantastic.
So just to clarify though, would any of those
that would cover 4 excursions.
So that in the 21,000, you've added a bus to 4 excursions.
We added 4 excursions. If we can get the grant again, then obviously we've augmented it. If we do not get the grant, we can maintain what we're currently doing.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
Thank you. The grant you're talking about, though, isn't the Ministry of Culture and Communications grant. That hasn't arrived. If memory serves, that arrives December 29th.
We get portions through worship. We get a portion at the beginning. We get a portion at the end in March, April.
Okay, so on the budget piece, on the detail, you haven't received anything from the Ministry of Culture and Communication, but you do have a line with other grants. Is that the same piece we're talking about?
We're talking 2019 or 2018?
I'm talking the actual of 2018.
The actual 2018, we have a portion of it, because we have 2 years kind of coming and going on top. The grant runs from June through March, so there's some overlap, so some is in there.
But that's different than the one that you needed for the,
You're not talking the main ministry. No, the ministry grant is the huge grant.
That's
the 30,000.
That's not a huge grant.
Well, that's as huge as they get.
Collingwood's grant, if I remember, is significantly higher.
Yes, we're crippled,
but it's a larger grant. But
no.
The one you're talking about is that other piece, that 14,000.
Other grants, yes.
Okay, that was what I needed.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Bray.
Thank you. I've had the privilege of sitting on the library board for the last 4 years, and all of our staff departments, I must say, they make $1 stretch to like 10 or 15 or 20. They're incredibly resourceful and creative, and I know they're slowly staffing up, but I think it's really important to kind of get them more hours and try to stabilize their staff, because there were so many issues, and you look like they basically operate on $91,000 if we give them the 75% increase to programs. So on a true shoestring, I think they do amazing things in that little building next door, so kudos to the library.
Half the budget. If we ignore that top line for a moment, you'll see that really there haven't been a lot of changes in our capital budget. We've just asked for a little boost in furniture because we have a new staff member, and then of course computer equipment, trying to maintain and keep on top of our needs there. A minor increase there as well. No increase or real changes in the collection budget. So of course the big change, or what you're seeing, is the $2.8 million. The town treasurer has allocated that towards a new library facility. The funds are made up from 1.5 is from a combination of the capital asset replacement reserves and the library's general reserve. 1.13 is from the DC reserves earmarked for the library, and $157,000 is from the library's discretionary reserves. So what is important to know at this time is that the $2.825 million allocated in draft 1 is a figure derived from a 2015 Hempson Consultant DC study, and that takes into effect the cost of a 16,000 square foot library building for a total of $5.8 million cost. Although the treasurer plans to allocate more reserve funds for the new build in 2020 budget, this funding is not sufficient to pay for the board's vision of a new 30,000 square foot facility. Building that size, we believe, will better meet the needs of our community. According to the Ontario Public Library Guidelines, updated in 2010, as well as the Association of Rural and Urban Public Libraries of Ontario Guidelines, updated in 2012, as well as the Southern Ontario Library Service recommendations from 2010, a library serving a catchment area of 10,000 to 35,000 people should offer 1 square foot per capita. The Wasaga Beach Public Library Planning Department predicts that the town's population will exceed 37,000 people in 2031, and based on these parameters, the 16,000 square foot library will not adequately serve the people of Wasaga Beach. So the library board would like to respectfully request an opportunity to share with council a more in-depth presentation of the library board's vision for a new building. With for council's approval, we would like to submit a business case that outlines a new library space requirements, potential uses, potential partnerships, as well as funding options. And we are really hoping to align the board's vision with the council direction. Questions?
Just on that topic, that's another one of those items that was in the hub, and that council will have a discussion in the near future as to how we're moving forward with all of that. But I think it would be beneficial to have a presentation and see where you're at with that. So
I've spoken with Jocelyn. We'll try and get that together for you for our next meeting.
January 15th is going to be a really long day. Just keep on adding to it.
I can wait then.
Is there any questions on it? Councillor Wells?
Well, just comment, and really I'm echoing, I think, what you've already said, is that sizing. I'd like to have an understanding of the various reports that you were referring to, and how that space is utilized. What is contained within that? What's the relative spacing that's contained within that? I need that to fully comprehend going forward.
Okay. Councillor Blanchard?
Well, just one more, just for everyone here as a refresher. I can't remember the visitation for, I don't know if it was last year or year to date this year, but I know I can't remember if it was 50,000 or 70,000. I know it's a big number, so do you recall?
Through your worship, we have more than 50,000 visitors a year come through our library. I think for 2018 we're looking at about 60, because we've added an extra people counter to count the people coming and going through the far side. So for a small little space, we get a decent amount of traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Revenues?
Revenues. Okay. Not so exciting. Of course, the big portion is from the Ministry of Culture Communications grant. That is a standard amount that has not changed in over 20 years. Unfortunately, we don't know if we'll see a change due to the current government situation, and we're going to hope that we keep this.
Yeah, so, that's great.
Otherwise, we do the best that we can to try and generate revenue, as small as it is. Certainly, one of our bigger ways to do that is through the rental of our boardroom, which is a very popular, very busy space.
Councillor Belanger.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't recall in your original vision presentation to the last council whether you had done a revenue slide, but I mean there were additional community rooms as part of a component of that, so it's not going to be huge, but it might be something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is, just as it is in the rec department, a nice money maker if we can have a few of those rooms available. Right now, our current room, we are a little curtailed on how much we can generate, because we have some fantastic partnerships with the Early On organization. They utilize the room 2 days a week, which is fantastic in offering programs for parents with small children, babies, right up to the age of 7. So they're in there Monday and Fridays, which makes it unavailable for other purposes. We also partner with Georgian College. They're offering programs in there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So because of that, we don't have a lot of other options for generating, because we're offered those spaces to them.
And I'm assuming those type of details can come forward when you bring that.
manager highlights. As I stated, we get more than 50,000 people through the library, both residents and seasonal tourists. They take advantage of the library's collection, technology, services, informative programs. The priorities for the 2019 budget really focus on our ability